The wind rose from the East River with a strange insistence, carrying with it the smell of salt, the cry of gulls, and the promise of a sunset that would brand itself forever into memory. The girls sat close to her mother on a wooden bench, the city glowing behind them like a kingdom of glass and steel. A purple shawl danced wildly in the air, swelling like a sail ready to lift them away. She leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender, unaware that this moment, this exact moment, was more fragile than the flight of the birds circling above. Every detail seemed woven with an invisible thread, the fading light painting the skyline in gold, the wings of pigeons slicing the sky, the river whispering secrets against the pier. She thought it was just another evening in New York, another conversation with the woman who had always been her anchor. But time was already counting backwards, and the city itself seemed to know something she did not. Stay with us until the end of this story. And if you love emotional tales that touch the soul, subscribe now to Golden Tales and share in the comments what part moves you most. The last day in New York. In the early afternoon, the wind from the East River carried the taste of salt and farewell. The sun was beginning to sink behind the silhouette of Manhattan, carving towers as if they were cards in a luminous deck. My mother and I sat on the long bench at Brooklyn Bridge Park, our feet almost touching the cool planks of the deck, and the world seemed to fit entirely inside that rectangle of water and city. She wrapped the purple shawl around her shoulders, the same one I used to borrow in secret as a child to play princess, and, with an instinctive gesture, tucked my hair behind my ear, as if I were still 7 years old, about to run off. "Where do we start?" she asked, as if opening a map inside her chest. "You said you wanted a perfect day." I knew she was teasing. There is no perfect day when you know it's the last. But my mother had always found a way to fit a stubborn handful of beauty into the impossible, as if she were hiding petals in the pocket of a winter coat. "Let's go wherever the city takes us," I answered, trying to control the tremble in my hands. She smiled. The wind blew, and the shawl turned into a sail. For an instant, I thought if I let go, it would carry her away, floating across the river, over bridges, scratching the sky. That morning she had woken up before me. I heard the coffee maker, the clink of cups, and found the kitchen table set with the care of a holiday. Warm bread from the oven, raspberry jam, lilac flowers in a recycled jar. "If life is short, let it at least be sweet," she said when she saw me at the door. We didn't need to talk about exams, results, consultations. Her body, once so firm, had thinned like a road fading in the distance. But her voice remained the same, the voice that calls, the voice that holds the world by an edge and refuses to let it fall. "Today I want the city to be ours," she declared. "A day with no rush, everything we love, everything we promised and never did." We took the subway at 86th and Lexington. My mother, stubborn as ever, refused the elevator. "I can still handle the stairs, my daughter," she insisted, breathing deeply. "And I don't want shortcuts today." The turnstiles beeped, and we squeezed through with one Metro card, like a secret. In the crowded train, Broadway posters gleamed in color, children showed off backpacks with dinosaurs and unicorns, and a saxophonist played Autumn Leaves in a way that made the whole season fit inside the car. I held her arm when the train jolted, and she leaned close to whisper, "See, even the noise of this city is music." We got off at 42nd Street and walked to the New York Public Library. My mother could never resist the stone lions. She used to say that when she first arrived from Brazil, young and uncertain, the two guardians, patience and fortitude, had taught her, without words, the school of survival. "Take a picture of me with them, one more time," she asked, leaning against the pedestal. I framed her, and on my phone screen she seemed lighter, almost translucent. Maybe it was the sun, maybe the hidden magic of books. I knew that years before, she had studied here for her night nursing classes, copying words into blue notebooks, dreaming of a future that ended up fitting into both our lives. Inside, we wandered through the halls in silence. She touched the spines like greeting old friends. She stopped in front of an old edition of Dom Casmurro in the foreign literature section. "I've always thought life is jealous of imagination," she said. "But thank goodness one feeds the other." We bought 2 coffees from a cart on the corner afterward. She held the cup with both hands, warming her thin fingers, and the foam left her a child's mustache. I laughed. She laughed back. Small laughter, so the pain wouldn't overhear. We took a bus to 34th and walked to the High Line. In the suspended gardens, the late-season plants swayed like a choir of secrets. My mother gripped the railing, looking down at the tracks that once carried milk and meat to the markets of Manhattan. "Everything that comes to this city has to learn how to become something else," she said. "Iron becomes a walkway, ruins become gardens, sadness becomes stories. So can we." I wanted to believe her. The wind came again, playing with the shawl, and for a moment we were two flags waving, belonging to no place and every place. When the fatigue began to creep in, we ducked into a diner with flickering neon. We shared apple pie with ice cream. My mother ate 3 spoonfuls and pushed the plate toward me. "The rest is yours. You need strength. So do you." She smiled, and that smile carried both endings and beginnings. I wanted to ask so much: how she handled fear, where she hid her regrets, if she had one last wish that could still be fulfilled in a single afternoon. Instead, I asked, "What would you most like to see today?" She rested her chin on her hand, watching through the window as a flower truck passed, scattering lilac reflections. "I'd like to see the sea touch the city," she said. "Like when you were little and we'd go to Coney Island just to feel the world had no edges." We took the D line south. She dozed on my shoulder for 2 minutes. When she woke, her eyes had the color of cold water. On the boardwalk, the Ferris wheel drew a clock in the sky that measured not hours, but courage. The sea was gray, but the gulls screamed like a festival. "Do you remember your first time here?" I asked. "I remember your amazement at the foam," she said. "You thought the water was making snow." We laughed. She picked up a cracked seashell and placed it in my hand. "It's not perfect," she said, "but it fits in a pocket." Later, on the train back, a boy blew on an origami bird that flapped its wings. My mother smiled at him. He blew again, and for a second everyone in that car believed the paper was alive. In Canal Street, we found dumplings sizzling in the window of a tiny shop. We sat on plastic stools, sipping tea. She handled the chopsticks delicately. "Remember when you learned to use these and swore they were better than forks?" I teased. "I've been an inventor," she replied with a wink. "I invented ways to pay bills, ways to sing you to sleep, ways to make Mondays happy. Forks are easy." Before sunset, she insisted we stop at her favorite stationery shop. She bought a card with a drawing of the city at dusk. "This is for you," she said. "But don't read it yet." The envelope felt heavier than paper should. That's how we ended up back at the bench in Brooklyn Bridge Park, the shawl rising like a sail. I leaned my head on her shoulder, inhaling lavender cream. Light spilled between the skyscrapers, and the river returned it as sparks. "You know what I love most about New York?" she asked. "The noise." "The forgiveness," she said. "This city forgives us every day. Gives another chance, another street, another cafe, another bridge to cross." We sat long into the evening. I told her about my dream to write a book. She confessed she had always wanted to learn piano but feared disturbing the neighbors. I promised that when things got better, we'd take lessons together. She nodded, though I could see in her eyes the silent certainty that some promises are made to float, like kites, not to land. "Are you afraid?" I asked. She paused. "Of the pain, yes. Of what will be missing, too. But not of absence." Absence. She searched for the word. Absence is another form of presence. You'll look for me in places, and I'll be there. In the smell of clean clothes when you open the closet, in the whistle of the kettle, in that silly Subway ad that always makes you laugh. It will be different, but I'll be there. The sun slid behind One World Trade Center, sending a blade of light across us. The wind tugged at the shawl. She held one end. "Hold it with me," she said. I did. For a moment, between us, there was a wing. And maybe there really was. She cleared her throat and shifted on the bench. "I need to tell you some things, Helena," she said, using my full name like she did when I was a child making a mess. First, I'm sorry for the days I came home late, for Christmases I spent on night shifts, for every moment you needed me and I didn't hear. Mom. Let me finish. Second, everything worked out, even when it didn't. I watched you be brave in ways I never was. That's art. And third, she squeezed my hand, please, don't hold back. Don't hold back joy, don't hold back hugs, don't hold back forgiveness. We get used to saving things for later, and later, we forget where we put them. I cried quietly. Around us, couples took selfies, joggers stretched, life went on, unaware. She handed me a tissue, laughed when it fell apart with my tears, then pulled from her pocket an old cloth square, washed 1,000 times, once a baby's burp cloth, later a dish towel, now the handkerchief of farewell. Better, she said. Cloth lasts longer in memory. When the sky turned orange, she asked, shall we cross the bridge? The Brooklyn Bridge stretched before us like a harp. She walked slowly, resting often. At one pillar, she touched the stone and whispered, if you promise to keep walking, I promise to keep watching. I promise, I said. At the halfway point, we stopped to see the ferries cut the water. A tourist couple asked her to take their picture. She framed it perfectly, the sun a coin behind their heads. The woman said, you're an artist. My mother only smiled. I wanted to shout yes, she was, an artist of daily miracles, a soprano of small victories, a painter of fridge notes. By the time we reached Manhattan, the sky had turned violet. We slipped into a church, lit 2 candles, and listened to the imagined footsteps of ghosts. Outside, the city glowed like a circus tent. She insisted we go up to the One World Observatory. The urgency in her voice silenced my protests. The elevator shot up, and when the doors opened, the city spread beneath us like a constellation. Streets were galaxies, windows were stars, the river a liquid Milky Way. She leaned against the glass, scanning above, below, across, then turned to me. Remember when we came here before and you asked if you could see people's wishes from the sky? I remember you said yes, that they looked like popcorn. They still do, she smiled. And yours is the biggest one. I asked what it was. She didn't answer. She pulled a folded note from her pocket, pressed it into my palm. Open it when I'm no longer nearby, she said. It's not a secret. It's a push. In the village, we found a small jazz club. A quartet played slowly, the saxophonist closing her eyes to reach the perfect note. My mother listened with her chin resting on her hand, the purple shawl neatly folded on her lap. Music is the only language absence understands, she whispered. Listen. I did. The melody carried rain, childhood, laundry on the line, glowing windows. When it ended, my mother clapped gently. The drummer waved to us. On the way out, she bought wilted tulips from an old man on the corner. So you'll remember that beauty can faint, she joked. And still be beauty. We returned to the same bench by the water. Now the skyline was a shattered mirror of sparks. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You're going to be fine, she said. Is that an order? It's a blessing. The wind lifted the shawl. I caught it before it flew. She laughed softly. Let it go, she whispered. You can't hold the wind. So I loosened my grip. The fabric danced but didn't escape. Like everything we keep by love, it dances, but it stays. Back home, she went straight to bed. I made soup. She wanted only tea. We watched an old sitcom we both loved, jokes worn thin but still a key to home. She fell asleep on my arm. When I woke, the room was silent and cold. I knew before I knew. Her body carried the immense peace of something finally at rest. I pressed my forehead to hers, whispering thanks without words for every school morning, every fever nursed, every "it's going to be okay" repeated until it became true. Then, like ritual, I made coffee in the kitchen. And remembered the envelope. At the table, I opened it. The card showed the city at sunset. Inside, her handwriting, tilted, steady, with a small flower drawn at the end. Helena, if you're reading this, it means the perfect day did its job. I wasn't afraid to leave because I spent my whole life learning how to stay in you. Keep these as you'd keep a cracked seashell in your pocket. The purple shawl is yours. Wear it when you feel wind inside. It whispers secrets only we know. Take the writing course. The city needs your eyes version. Buy coffee for strangers sometimes. Kindness is the subway that takes us home. When you cross bridges, look at the cables. They remind us a city is held up by invisible threads. So is life. If you ever doubt, touch the spines of books in the library. I'll be there, borrowing the lion's courage. I love you in a way even Manhattan can't explain. Mom. A tear smeared the I love you. I brushed it, the ink spreading like watercolor. I tucked the card into the greasy recipe book she once gave me, pages swollen with love. The days after were like a subway losing power in a tunnel, then flickering back to life. I handled papers, answered calls, accepted soups from neighbors in reused jars, listened to stories about my mother I'd never known, the nurse who folded glove wrappers into origami for sick children, the neighbor who fixed toasters, the stranger who held someone's hand during a subway panic attack. A week later, I returned to Brooklyn Bridge Park with a purple shawl. The wind recognized it. Sitting on that same bench, I understood her words. Absence really was a form of presence. There was no hole, only her outline guiding me. I pulled out the small folded note she had given me at the observatory. It read, I want to see you invent courage where no one expects it. If someday it hurts too much, find a high place, a rooftop, a bridge, a hill, a bench by the water, and remember, everything looks smaller from afar. Fear, from above, is just a tiny word. Mom. I tucked it back. A ferry passed, passengers waving at no one and everyone. I waved back, feeling I was waving to her. Months later, I enrolled in the writing course. The teacher asked us to start with images. I wrote about her hand on the bridge stone, the whistle of the kettle, the saxophone turning air into a path. I wrote about the shawl that became a wing, about how the city forgives daily. At the semester's end, I read my piece aloud in a cafe. In my story, a mother and daughter walked New York like turning pages in an album. When I finished, a girl approached me, crying. She said she had lost her mother too, in another place, another language, and for 15 minutes she found a bridge between them. I went home late, climbing the stairs at 86th and Lexington, refusing the elevator. I opened the door, boiled water, and when the kettle whistled, I almost heard her voice. See? Even the noise is music. A year later, on the same day, I returned to the bench in Brooklyn. I brought flowers, tulips, like before, and a notebook. I wrote her a letter. I told her about the small victories. I published a piece in a magazine, bought a second-hand electric piano and began learning chords, paid for 2 strangers' coffees on a rainy morning. I also confessed the defeats, days when longing came like a runaway train, nights when I found myself searching for the scent of lavender on the pillows. At the end, I wrote, Mom, I keep walking. I carry both your part and mine. From above, fear shrinks. And down here, life grows. Folding the letter, I noticed the purple shawl was once again playing with the wind. I let it dance. A little boy ran past and shouted to his mother, Look, a superhero cape. I laughed to myself. Maybe he was right. Maybe every mother is exactly that, an invisible cape we learn to wear when we need it most, a wing that stretches without asking permission, a sail that fills and pushes us forward even when the boat thinks it can't go on. The sun began to fall behind the city, just like that day, and I closed my eyes. I saw again her hand offering me a cracked seashell, heard the phrase she spoke in the library, felt the light weight of the note in my pocket. And I understood, with a clarity that hurt and healed all at once, that this bench wasn't the place where I lost her. It was the place where I found her forever. I stood. The bridge was there, like an invitation. The city, generous, offered new chances, another street, another cafe, another crossing. I wrapped the shawl around my shoulders, and it molded to my skin like a promise. I took a few steps and whispered to the air, to the water, to the steel, to the gulls, to her. I will keep walking. And you, keep watching. The wind answered in its own way, lifting my hair and lighting a path of sparks across the river. I moved forward. New York, once again, forgave me. And in its forgiveness, I saw her, whole, mother, artist, city. The last time I saw her was the first day of everything that followed. The purple shawl fluttered again, caught by the evening wind as if the city itself was breathing with her. She stood on the wooden deck of Brooklyn Bridge Park, the skyline glowing like a constellation reborn, and closed her eyes. For a moment, the sound of the river was her mother's voice, soft and steady, whispering that absence is never empty, that love leaves outlines we can still follow. She lifted the shawl to her shoulders. It wrapped around her like a memory, like wings, like a cape she had never known she carried. A child passing by pointed at her and laughed. "Look, a superhero!" She smiled through her tears, realizing that maybe that was exactly what her mother had left her, the strength to walk forward even when the world felt like it had stopped. The bridge stretched before her, lit with golden lines. She took a deep breath, placed one hand on the railing, and whispered, "I'll keep walking. You keep watching." The wind answered, scattering light over the water. This was not the place she lost her mother. It was the place she found her forever. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Golden Tales for more emotional stories. And tell us in the comments, if you could relive one scene from your own life, which would it be?